Now we want to write a code that concatenates an integer array to another one. So we're gonna start by declaring two integer arrays. And then we need to call this function concat with these two arrays. The return value of this function is an array, and we cannot print integer arrays like character arrays. So we need to declare this print function as well. In both of these functions, we need to iterate our elements of the arrays. So we need the size of arrays. So I'm gonna declare size of A and initialize it with and then size of B so in this function we need both size of A and size of B, and also for print function we need the size of the output array, which will be size of A plus size of B. Now let's start by defining the print function. Void print. We are gonna pass an integer array and its size to this function. So we need to iterate our elements of the array and print them out. For the concat function, the return value is an array of integers. The function name is concat, and we are gonna pass the first array, size of the first array, the second array, and its size. Now we are gonna declare this a static integer array named result. And since it's an static array, compiler will allocate its memory at compile time, and we cannot use a variable to set its size. So we need to use a literal. So by knowledge of these 6 chapters, there is no way that we can return a dynamic size local array. So we are going to accept this partial solution for now, and we are going to learn how to solve this problem in future chapters. So if we have this array, we first need to iterate our elements of array A and update result at index I by A at index I. After this, we need to iterate our elements of B and copy the elements starting from index size A and continue until we reach the element size A plus size B minus 1. And we just need to return this array. Now let's try to solve the same problem with vectors. So let's change this array to a vector. And we don't need size separately anymore. So we're gonna call this print. And inside print, we are just gonna call contact with A and B because we can get the size of vectors inside functions. So in print function, we need to print a vector, an integer vector. And since we are not gonna modify it, we can just define it as a constant value and pass it by reference. So we are going to iterate our elements of array, and we are going to access array at index I and print it. In concat function, we need to return an integer vector. And since we don't modify A and B in this function, we can just define them as constant integer vectors and pass by reference. Now we are going to declare this vector result, and instead of setting the values, we are just gonna use pushback A at index I. Similarly here, we can just use pushback and for getting size, we are just gonna use A dot size and B dot size. We don't have any problem returning a local vector because we are returning by value. If we want to avoid returning large vectors and we don't care about keeping A and B as they are, we can just change the return type to void and turn A to the return value. So we are gonna remove this constant and we don't need this vector anymore, and we don't need to return anything, and we only need to push back elements of B at the end of A. Now that the return type of concat is void, we are gonna call it in a separate line, and then we just need to print A. So we got the same result by literally concatenating elements of B to A.